Hello YouTube, this is Apex27 once again, bringing you another Dark Souls brain teaser. Won't even call it really a theory, although this one is a little more of a theory than the last one, but I like to call them brain teasers because I'm not doing all this fancy editing and research. I do a little bit of research, but anyway, today's theory is going to, or brain teaser, is going to revolve around the Civil War within a Civil War that you guys overlooked because it was being covered by the angels and all that stuff. I'm going to tell you why I think these armor sets are not in defeat but are instead in protest. In order to explain why I think that, I'm going to need to lure this knight, so let me cut to when I get him lured to where I need to lure him. Alright, now look at this. They are swinging around each other and they are not damaging each other. Same goes for the blue knight that's over in the corner over here. Alright, so look at this. They are working together. They are not fighting each other. This was hard to get footage of because it takes forever to get that fucking wing knight over here. They can't hit each other. They're programmed to not do damage to each other. Now you say, Apex, why does that matter? Well, let me get this out real fast. I have a list. Enemies that attack each other in Dark Souls, right? Always have attacked each other if it's important that they're enemies. For instance, the Dark Wraiths outside of the Abyss Watchers will attack the Abyss Watchers. Even though that the Abyss Watchers can't leave the room, they will aggro on the Abyss Watchers. Obviously, they'll aggro on the Gru. The Lycanthrope in the cell in the Ethereal Dungeon will attack the jailers if released. The Black Knights will attack Sorig. Don't know if that's really that important. They won't attack other Black Knights, obviously. And then, there are a few other instances that I don't have here, but I know that it's true that Dark Souls enemies attack each other if it's important that they're enemies. Out of all the enemies that attack each other in the Dark Souls series because it's important that they're enemies, don't you think that the Wing Knights would attack the Knights of Lothric? That would be probably the most important detail when it comes to this. And also, this area is so old, and I know this is a little goofy because a lot of people want to chalk it up to it's just FromSoft, you know, putting enemies where they go so you can have a challenge. They don't do that. If you pay attention to the series and you watch some of the deeper lore videos, you'll notice that enemy placement is very thought out, and it's hard to explain, but for instance, there's a Black Knight that sits outside of Guinevere's room in Dark Souls 1. If you look at the rooms, you can tell which one is Guinevere's, which one's was the Nameless King's, and there's not a third room for Gwendolyn, if I'm not mistaken. In the Nameless King's room in Dark Souls 1, or at least the Firstborn, which is pretty much confirmed to be the Nameless King, the Black Knights are in there, and they chill out in there. But in Guinevere's room, there are no Black Knights, and instead there's one propped up behind a door, which most people probably just, you know, put that to, oh, he's behind the door because it's a like challenge thing. They're like, oh, you won't expect the Black Knight to be behind the door, haha, hee hee. But if you look, I believe it's in Hawkshaw's video, he explains that for the plot against the gods, he explains that the knight is not only propped up behind the door, but there's a chair next to him for sitting, which means that on top of the fact that this is Guinevere's room, The Black Knight is placed outside the room because the Black Knight wouldn't want to disrespect her and be in her room. He would want to stand outside respectfully, or sit outside in the chair respectfully. So yes, they probably put that Black Knight there for challenge purposes, but also they thought about it in lore perspective too. And this game was run with Miyazaki in charge again, right? So that has me thinking that if there was a civil war between these knights that are here, they would attack each other. Long story short, that's why. Also, these pieces of armor, I know some of them here are scattered, and I think that's just to show that this knight has been fighting here. But too many of these armor sets are propped up in respect. Like, if these were the enemies, they wouldn't be propped up like that, in my opinion. So that's the first step of this theory that helps me explain why I think there's a bigger civil war going on here. Alright, so our next step in figuring this theory out, or this brain teaser, is our good buddy Goddard. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is Goddard. I don't know exactly who it is. It's been a while, but what I do know is that it's a Black Hand. And something that I'm pretty sure everyone's noticed, or at least a lot of people have noticed, and if you've never noticed then you're about to be kind of amazed, is this Black Hand is blinking still. Which means he's still alive. He's faking death right now. And you could say, oh yeah, Apex, that's FromSoft being lazy. You know, they forgot to shut his eyes. They just left an NPC model here and just didn't shut his eyes. And he's still programmed to be blinking. But that is not how FromSoft works. The only way to portray that he's faking death is to have something on his body moving. And the most obvious way to portray that he's still alive is either to give him a breathing, which yes, you could, that'd probably be harder to animate though. Instead, just have his eyes open and shut. Because FromSoft is all about saving time and assets while also still delivering a pretty great project. Now the biggest problem, the biggest thing about that is that we find the key to the archives, if I'm not mistaken, on him. If it's not the key to the archives, it's the key to something important, but I think it's the key to the archives. It's been a long time, and I just, like I said, I'm doing, this is rough stuff. I'm not doing like major research, but anyway, he gives you the key, and I think he also gives you weapons. I don't remember which weapon it is, but probably his weapon, the Goddard swords or whatever, which is why I think people think this is Goddard. But either way, he gives you the key, and then later on, you can summon him to fight one of the Lords of Cinder, I think. I don't remember which one it is. I know. It might be twins. I'm not sure, though. Either way, those are things that you can do. And to me, that means that Goddard does want you to succeed. He does want you to get into Lothric Castle and finish your mission, which is obviously against Prince Lothric's wishes. Why would a Black Hand be defying the Prince of Lothric? So that's something I want you to think about, and it'll be important later. The next thing I want to point out is a little detail here at Firelink Shrine. You can also find it in the Untended Graves area. So, in Dark Souls 1, you can sell the Soul of Smo to Frampt. And when you do, if I'm not mistaken, you get a really low amount of souls in return, instead of the full amount that you normally get for other souls. If you give Quelaag's or Ornstein's or anybody else's soul, you'll get the same amount of souls you get for popping it without giving it to Frampt. But if you give Smo's soul to Frampt, I believe you get 1 soul in return, instead of the whatever amount, 300,000 or whatever crazy amount it is that you would get for just popping it. And somewhere in the lore, correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere in the lore it states specifically that Frampt did not like Smo. So you're asking probably, why does that matter here in Dark Souls 3? Well, with neither of those characters present, except Smo's armor obviously still exists in this game. But anyway, the reason that matters and that I'm bringing it up is because when you go to this woman, I don't remember her name.
Well met, Ashen. How?
Right. She's always loud and obnoxious. And you go to sell items, and you go to rings, you'll notice the faceplate rings. The priestess ring and the scholar rings are both 1,000. The hunter's rings and the knight's rings, which are the Black Hands and the Lothric Knights representation, are 300 each. This to me shows a value, and the Knights and the Black Hands are valued at less. Now, I don't know if this means that the Knights and the Black Hands have always been viewed this way, or if it's because there are Knights and Black Hands that are rebelling against the Lothric, the royalties, the Lothric royals, and that's why they're lower, or, you know, if it's always been a thing. None of the priestesses are in rebellion, and none of the scholars are in rebellion. They're all in Lothric Castle helping, as where there are Knights and Black Hands that are not in Lothric Castle and are not protecting Prince Lothric. So that's really important to show their status.
Ashen one.
And I don't think it should be overlooked. Another point that I want to make is another point I want to make about the Lothric Knights before we close up is that in the lower Lothric Castle, in the very beginning of the game, the Lothric Knights do not have any the aggro's from really far away. They don't have any miracles or little helpers that cast miracles on them. They're just Lothric Knights. And also, besides the one Blue Knight, none of them have open helmets, but I don't think that matters. Anyway, so yeah, up here in the castle, the Lothric Knights use miracles. They have helpers that cast miracles on them, as you can see, and they're up here at the castle, and I think there's a distinct difference between that. The lower Knights, like I said, they're in rebellion. None of the clerics want to help them because the clerics are part of Lothric's regime. They're with Prince Lothric. And that's to show that. I know you, once again, could easily just say, this is for difficulty scaling. And while it is, that's just not how FromSoft works. They don't just make things hard for the sake of making them hard. They also consider everything in between. And one of the things they're considering here, in my opinion, is status between the lower Lothric Knights and the higher Lothric Knights. The higher Lothric Knights are with Lothric, and they have his blessing, literally, as where the lower Lothric Knights do not, because they are in rebellion. So, final thoughts on this brain teaser. First of all, why is this trench here? I want to know. I want to know why this trench is here. Like, why is there just a huge... I've always kind of thought about this. This bothers me. Just like this missing patch of brick. It's really probably not important at all. I mean, I don't know if it relates at all to right here. We're trying to block something off from the sewers. Could it have been, what's his name from the dragon guy, the boss you fight? I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, if you look around, once again, there are Lothric Knight armor sets chilling, and this time they do have their helmets on, which is different. The ones in the lower Lothric Castle on the high wall don't have helmets on. So I haven't really thought about that too hard and what that really means. Maybe these are the knights that are in protest. I'm not sure. Maybe they're all in protest. Or maybe, I don't know. Either way. Something to note about these knight armor sets that are up and also have helmets on is that they're holding these flags, right? And if you've ever paid attention to these flags, you'll notice, and this is for all of them, and these are the ones that seem to be staying the straightest, the longest, so we're going to focus on them. They have a different logo. It's got a dragon in the middle. So what I'm thinking, and these go for all the flags, even those big ones over there that are ripped and shredded, although they're kind of bugging out right now, sadly. Let's see if we can get a better, it's not, it doesn't look like it's straightened out, but there's dragon logos on these flags. Yeah, there's a different one. Let me see if I can get one of these. Come on. Come on. It's not straightened out. Whatever. Okay. Anyway. And then, when you get here, obviously, there and there, two dragons appear and start breathing fire everywhere to stop you from going forth. I'm not sure exactly if that has anything to do with what I was just talking about, because it's clearly, that was an accident, didn't mean to do that. It's clearly the Nameless King. I believe these flags are Nameless King flags, and those dragons are minions of the Nameless King, the ones that attack here. And I don't know if someone put these flags here in protest or anything, or what, or if they did it in protest of the protest, because clearly the dragons and the Nameless King are trying to help Lothric by stopping you from approaching, unlike Goddard earlier, who gave you the key and let you into the archives. So maybe these knights are in protest of the protest, because the knights, the lower Lothric knights, are protesting Lothric, and these knights are protesting their protest. I'm not entirely sure. It's a big, it's a mystery, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. These are just, like I said, brain teasers to help you think, so that everyone else can help me think, because I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I don't know, I guess waiting for Elden Ring to come out, we're all getting a little stir crazy. So I don't know. Plus, like I said, I saw some of the lore videos that go in deeper, and it inspired me to finally come out with this theory. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that, really. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I think I have one more video that I want to make, but it's so much further reaching than these two last ones have been, so I don't know, I might get a lot of hate for it, because it seems like I've already gotten some people that aren't happy with my last one. I think people will be happier with this one, though. So thank you for watching. This has been Apex 27, and adios for now.